Blah.
Welcome to the Streaming Evil Live show. I wish I could sing the theme song to Death Rider in the House of Vampires. Sadly, I don't know it by heart at all. I hope it comes out on soundtrack. I remember there being some like, whoa, like sort of stuff, you know, classic Danzig whoa situation in the credits, which I enjoyed. By the way, just for anybody who watches this broadcast, make sure that you've seen the film or you don't care what's in the film, because we are going to spoil the ever-loving shit out of this movie. It is going to get spoiled for you. So just beware. Beware. Hey, what's going on, Chris? How you doing, Matt? We already have comment reviews. I do have a very special guest, so we will not be diving knee deep into comments per se so quickly. I also, yeah, so let's just launch into the show. We're gonna do it classic style. We have to start with our very important intro. Already I can see the connection speed is slowing down. That sucks. All right, let's.
Jeff is gonna talk about the Misfits right now. He's a nerd about this stuff, obsessed anyhow. Jeff never shuts his face, always needs to talk. Might be some weight if he went out for a walk. Do you think Danzig cares? He doesn't care. He's not incorrect.
Oh man, that's a classic right there. What's going on, Rue Morgue? We got Rue Morgue in the house. We have Walter White in from New Zealand. Walter, how are you? Mark, what's there to spoil? Oh boy. You guys already got me sweating. So I went to go see it in the theater. This is the first time I've seen a movie in the theater since March of 2020. March 12th, 2020. I went 2020. I went to go see The Hunt at my Alamo Drafthouse impulsively and didn't realize that it would be the last time for a very long time. Oh yeah, Amy just watched the movie. That's great. We have Russell Casualty, aka Russell Murdergram, in the house. What's going on, sir? And Walter White is doing great. That makes me a happy man. Good. Oh boy, we have a show for you guys tonight. So like I said, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a movie in the theaters for a long time. Going to a film festival this weekend, actually, Genre Blast Film Festival. I'm very excited. We got 2 films in the film festival, Transformations of Dr. Jenkins and Beyond the Green Hole were nominated. It's going to be what's up. But like I said, if you haven't seen Death Rider in the House of Vampires, just be aware, we are going to spoil the crap out of this. Like, maybe you might not think there's much to spoil, but we're gonna talk. I have questions for my mystery guest. I have a mystery guest. How did I meet this mystery guest? This is bizarre. So I'm on a website called Letterboxd, and Letterboxd is for us film nerds who just love to log and catalog and review movies that we watch. And it's just a wonderful website, and you can meet like-minded individuals. You can meet people that whatever you can meet people through reviews and stuff. And so when I was logging the fact that I had seen Death Rider in the House of Vampires, I noticed there was another comment from a gentleman named Anthony Arrigo, who said that he had worked on the film. And I instantaneously put a comment underneath and said, hey man, I want to have you on my show. I'm going to be reviewing the movie anyway, talking about the movie, whatever. It'd be great to have someone who was there, because I got questions. Now, in addition, so Anthony works as a second AD. I'm going to let him explain all that. It's you have the an AD is an assistant director. You have the first assistant director, and there's the second assistant director. You think there might be a third assistant director. There's not. There's the second assistant director. Don't ask me how that works. I always heard that it's because they would call it the turd assistant director, and that's why there's no third assistant director. I don't actually know that. But I like to bring experts onto the show to talk about the stuff that I maybe like can't answer or not qualified to. So I'm really happy to have Anthony. Anthony does a lot of writing for Dread Central. Great website. Go check it out. And he's acted in some stuff, and he is a horror film DVD Blu-ray hound in the same way that I am, except he has a much larger collection than I do. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Anthony Arrigo. Give him a warm round of applause. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Anthony's film collection.
Fun fact, there actually is a third AD.
There is a third AD.
Only in Canada, though.
Okay, break that down. Why is it called a second, and why is it called a third in Canada?
I couldn't really answer that question, honestly. I don't know why it's only a third in Canada. I don't know why they call it a second either, because the second might as well be the third based on just the kind of work that they do. So I don't understand some of the terminology, honestly. But the second is very useful. So, we should probably just call them a third AD.
Okay. Well, first off, can you enlighten for the audience here? What are some of the responsibilities for the second AD?
Sure. So primarily what I'm doing is making call sheets, getting information out to the crew, getting all the actors through the works, which is hair and makeup, wardrobe, working with the first AD and the director to come up with a schedule that makes sense. So helping to facilitate the scheduling of the days. It's usually primarily done by the first, but the second AD does need to step in and help out with that on occasion. I have a lot of dialogue with all the different departments, just, if we're moving locations, it's my job to disseminate information on set and to make sure that everybody is there the next day, actors and crew.
For all intents and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
For all intents and purposes, someone brilliantly, Mark in the comments brilliantly said, "What about the Earth AD?" So you, on this film, you were not the second AD; you were the Earth AD.
I'll gladly take that title. And honestly, I'm a little disappointed in myself. I didn't make that joke on the call sheet one day. So,
oh man,
yeah, missed opportunity.
That is a missed opportunity. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. The only thing I was going to say is the duties are a little bit different depending on if you're working non-union or union. So if you're on something bigger, the second AD's duties are a little more stripped away because they've got other people that can handle it because it's a much bigger job. On shows like this that I did, I tend to wear a lot more hats.
Got you. That makes sense. And yeah, I mean, depending on the budget of the film, the scale of the production, you're going to have more people, more departments versus, the smaller the film, the more hats one wears. In the case of making a micro budget film, it's usually one guy doing everything, right?
Right.
So there you go. And then just to differentiate, I don't know if you answered this in your previous answer and I just didn't hear you. So then what about the second AD compared to the second AD? Second,
usually, at least on this show, when we had a second running, they would take the talent. Like once I would get everybody through the works and ready, then I would hand them off to the second. Second runs them down to set. He'll hang out with the first AD on set and kind of be his right hand there because I can't be there because I've got other shit to do. So yeah, that's the handoff. And then on some shows they'll do the PR reports, but I just tend to do everything myself.
Got you. Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate the full breakdown. I do some film stuff, but if you were to hand me that pop quiz and say, hey, what is the difference between a second and a second AD and blah 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 blah.
It's there. Most people really don't know, and honestly, it's not like you can apply for these jobs or there's a manual or anything. It's just kind of like you figure this stuff out on the fly and learn how to do your job while you're doing it.
it is in a weird kind of way. Like, yes, there are like official avenues. You can go through like the DGA or whatever guild.
Yeah, you can do the trainee program, and that's fantastic if you want to be doing big union shows. But for everybody else who's in the non-union world, you really got to figure a lot of this stuff out yourself, or be lucky enough to work with somebody that wants to train you.
It's like the last like trade where, or one of the few remaining trades where it's like where like you legitimately are like apprenticing, you know, like it's kind of like you get brought on to something and you learn directly from the person, not through any necessarily an official program, unless you're doing bigger scaled shows, as you said. So it is kind of like, it's a very interesting sort of like, you know, you get your next job by good word of mouth, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the only reason I even got into ADing is because some girl I worked with who was a first AD said, I liked your vibe on set, and I'd like to have you as my second, even though I know you've never done this before. So I'll do 2 movies with you, and by that time you'll be able to get hired on other shows in that position. And she was right, but I mean that's exactly what it takes.
Isn't that interesting too? How like it wasn't, you know, your aptitude on like a test or, you know, necessarily a result that you delivered. It was, I like your energy, and, you know, film sets where you're with someone 14 hours a day, you know, doing a good job could be predicated on how you know how to handle people and how you interact with people, and that
Yeah.
quality could get your foot in the door. So that's awesome. Truly.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's how most people get most of these jobs. Especially in non-union, it's good people you like to work with, because they're long days and they're tough and they're crazy hours, and you know, you got to work with good people you like, because otherwise it sucks and it becomes a big shit show, and we've all worked on way too many of those things. So yeah, you try to stick with a production family if you can find one.
Right. And you know, that is interesting too, how it's 2 different worlds, or not, I don't know, 2 different worlds, but you know, there are, when you're in a union or when you're working on a union set, the rules, everything is different. There's not, you know, there are, you know, there are draconian penalties if you don't follow through. You know, there are just all sorts of situations. While, you know, if you're non-union, then even though there are rules, there aren't really any rules, you know.
It's a lot more lax. Like in the union world, I couldn't touch grip equipment if I wanted to, because you're not allowed to. But non-union, it's like all hands on deck. Let's get this shit moved. So yeah, it's a much looser environment, and to be perfectly honest, in some ways I prefer doing non-union stuff. Just because I don't like stuff I didn't get into this industry because I like rigid structure.
Right.
So yeah, but it really just depends on the crew, honestly. If you have a good crew and they're feeding you well, it really doesn't matter to me what we're doing.
What's interesting too, you made mention of something that, you know, might seem ridiculous to some right off. What do you mean I can't touch the grips equipment or the gaffer's equipment or the sound card or whatever? But those, you know, those rules are in place for a very good reason, in the sense of like, you know, there is some order to that, in the way that, like, you know, you need to have certain experience or certain understanding of said thing in order to be handling it. And if you're not someone who's normally handling it, then, you know, it makes you liable for something that perhaps you shouldn't be liable for, because you may not have the experience, or vice versa. So that's,
yeah, and sometimes they just look at it in very literal terms as that is somebody else's job. Like
yeah, that too.
you know, I was on a union show earlier this year, and I used a golf cart to just move some equipment that was for our department. And somebody stopped me and said, "You can do that right now, but just so you know, that's a Teamster job, and they need to move any equipment at all." So it's even something like that, where you would think it's something innocuous, like just moving a couple traffic cones is not a big deal, but that's a specific
Very political. Very political.
Yeah,
Truly.
100%.
So before we dive into our big topic, in order to really sort of appreciate Anthony's role in the making of this film, you are not only did you work on as the second AD on Death Rider and the House of Vampires, but you are a Misfit Samhain Danzig fan.
Huge. Yes. Huge.
So, all right. Well, before you tell me about how you got the slot, or maybe it was as simple as just, hey, want to work on this thing? It's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm a huge fan. But tell me about how you got in. How did you get into what attracted you to your fandom for Glenn Danzig and his music?
I just always liked dark, creepy, different, twisted things. And oddly enough, when I was in, I think maybe 5th grade, there was a girl I was friends with who listened to Danzig, and she played one of, I think this was like right when Danzig 3 came out. So I was instantly hooked. I went down to Warehouse. I picked up all the cassettes. I was just fully into it, and once I found out that he had done some other music with different acts, then I started getting into Misfits. I started getting into Samhain. I started buying up all the tapes and CDs once I could find them, and I was fully into it. My first concert I ever went to was Danzig Halloween Night '94 at Irvine Meadows with Type of Show opening. It's still the best show that I've ever been to. So.
Wow. Is that the famous one? The famous Irvine Meadows show? Or the
Irvine Meadows show was '92. That was the big one that got all the releases. But '94, I think, was just as infamous if you've seen any footage from it. Same kind of show. You know, they had the pumpkin. It was on Halloween night, so they had the pumpkins out there, and this was right after Danzig 4 came out. So it was a hell of a set.
I'll tell you, that footage of the '92, I've not seen from '94, but that footage of the '92 is just like the band that.
Yeah, these are prime years that we're talking about here. And I have a really bad bootleg of the '94 show that's somewhat watchable, but I mostly just keep it for fond memories.
Well, you know, I mean, ultimately that's what it is. It's a fond memory. And truthfully, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a better copy of said show out there to have a document of it. Although we did get lucky. I did not realize this for years and years and years. I always thought that the first show was like this really crappy audio recording, but there's a better one on YouTube. It's just really crisp and loud, and it's a great way to take in the first show. And I'll send you a link to it after the show is done. Great.
Please do. I know that from '94, you're lucky to have any kind of decent footage from most of these shows, especially something that wasn't captured by the band. So, I'm just happy to watch anything. But after that show, I didn't see him live again until, sometime in the 2000s, because it's pretty much right after that, the classic lineup imploded. And I just didn't really go see him again for about 15 years.
Yeah, it was a dark time for Danzig. Some might say. But
yeah.
So all right. So how'd you get this gig?
It's almost as easy as you made it sound. I had a friend who was a producer on this, and he called me up and said that he had gotten a recommendation for me from one of the other guys who was on the production team, because they just needed a second AD. This was kind of an odd job in that they didn't just hire a bunch of people that they knew. They actually went out seeking some of these positions, like using Media Match or some other websites where you can find crew. So my name just got thrown in the hat as a second AD because, quite honestly, I'm sure there are plenty of us around, but this guy just happened to remember my name, probably because my initials are AA, and I'm almost always at the top of everybody's phone book. So usually I get a phone call just because of that alone. I've had people tell me I've gotten jobs just because I'm at the top of their phone list. So
just like horror movie distribution, where you want to have an A at the beginning of your title to be at the
exactly. Yeah. something arbitrary like that worked out in my favor in this case. So so they asked me to come on, and then there was almost a slight hiccup for a minute there because they go, "Oh, hey, we noticed you write for Dread Central, and this is a set." Because at first I just got brought on, and they say, "Hey, it's a horror western. Do you want to work on it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I mean, I'm a freelance person, so I'll take any kind of jobs when it come my way. And then they said, "Okay, so there might be a conflict because this is Glenn Danzig's new horror movie, and you write for Dread Central." So I said, "Guys, I'm not going to write anything about the movie. I'm not going to put some spoilers out." And they said, will you sign an NDA that says that you'll not say anything?" I said, "Yeah, of course." I mean, it's my job on Dread Central is not being a journalist anyway. I write home video reviews so that I can selfishly get all these titles. That's really the reason that I write for them. So so I had no problem signing that and taking the job. And then after that, it was just a matter of weeks before we got going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
like
right,
October.
So you hear that it is a horror western. You're like, cool, horror westerns. I'm a horror guy. I mean, we all like Near Dark or whatever. But what is going through your mind? Like, what happens when you hear, oh, this is Glenn Danzig's next film? And had you already known that? Had it leaked, or had he announced that he was doing Death Rider in the House of Vampires, and you put two and two together, or this was even before he started publicly discussing it?
No, I didn't really know a thing, honestly. And I'm friends with one of Danzig's good close friends, and I had done a movie with him earlier that year, and he didn't even mention that Glenn had that coming up. So I really had no idea. Once I found out it was Glenn's movie, I was pretty stoked. Like I don't get starstruck, and I'm celebrity isn't really an important thing to me, but people that I've admired since I was a kid, like I tend to have a little bit more nostalgic love for. So I was pretty stoked to work with Glenn for sure. One of my friends kind of warned me off the beginning. He goes, "You sure you want to work with Glenn though? Because you've kind of got this image in your head of the Glenn that you like. And what if you don't get along with them, or what if things don't go well?" And I just said, I feel like I'll probably get along with him. So I just wanted to go for it. I mean, there was no way I wasn't going to have that opportunity either way.
Could you imagine if you had, and some people feel this way, where like there are, I've definitely like crossed paths with people who are just like, yeah, like, it mostly comes from like reading rock biographies. Like, I'm not going to read that biography. I don't want to know anything about the person other than the persona that I see or hear on my albums and see on video and whatnot.
Right.
But it's like, at the same time, how could you be a fan the way that you are and like be like, no, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, Yeah,
it would have been tough to say no for sure. And also, I just really didn't have any good reason to say no. It was a good shoot. It was a pretty long shoot. It had a good rate. It checked all the boxes that I needed it to already. So I felt like it being Danzig's movie was just kind of like a bonus at that point.
Amazing. That's amazing. Before we get into, trying to decide, should we talk about what, your POV as to like what the production was like, or we should talk about, well, I have questions. Let's just launch into it. I have questions. Okay.
Do it.
Okay. First of all, again, guys, spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, then don't watch this, because we're about to spoil everything. Now, there's some films that you need to watch. By the way, I just want to say right after that, I really, truly, thoroughly enjoyed Death Rider in the House of Vampires. I did. Very, very much. And the reason why I think I did more than I might normally have, I didn't watch it on Shudder. I didn't watch it at home. I saw it in a big, dark movie theater with one other friend. We were the only people in the theater. It was great. And we just had the place ourselves. We saw it close to midnight. And it was such like a wonderful, immersive experience, in the same way that, I know a lot. I don't know if you've seen the, oh God, I don't know her. I can't pronounce her name. The second film she did was The Bad Batch. She did A Girl Walks Alone at Night. A Girl Who Walks Alone at Night. I can't pronounce her name. I don't know. She's a fantastic filmmaker. Have you seen Bad Batch?
No.
Oh, you should. Okay, well, I don't want to spoil that for you, but Bad Batch is another example of a movie. Or I would even say Mandy. You've seen Mandy?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Mandy's like a film you have to watch in the theater. It's an immersive experience. You know what I mean? Like you go, like it's not a film you want to watch on your little flat screen TV or whatever. You have to be in a dark theater and project it into this world. And I feel like in order to really appreciate this movie, you have to be thrust. You're getting like a peek into Danzig's world. You have to be fully thrusted into it by being in a dark theater. So I would advise everybody watching the stream to go and see this movie in theater immediately if you have the opportunity to. That is the way you want to take it in. Number one, like hands down. Would you agree with that, Anthony? Would you say it's a movie you could watch in a theater? Or
Yes. I think it should be seen in a theater. I'm sorry, I'm laughing a little bit because I'm thinking of the fact that like I feel like a lot of people don't have a huge attention span these days, and Glenn likes a lot of very long shots, and I feel like these are times when somebody could just maybe space out on their phone for a minute because they think the shot is going on for too long. And I think you're right. You do need to be in the theater to fully immerse yourself in that world, and really that's the way that you should be watching movies anyway, because it's too easy to be distracted anywhere else.
yes, I think precisely my point, and definitely one of the aesthetics that we are going to thoroughly discuss. You need to be. It's like, and here's the thing: an extension of seeing this movie in a dark movie theater is sometimes when you hold on a shot for a long period of time. I don't know about you, Anthony, but for me, sometimes it's almost like an out of body experience where you really just start to drift, and you're just so kind of lost in what you're seeing. You kind of like space out a little bit. And that I definitely had that vibe watching Death Rider and the House of Vampires, because you really just sort of get lost in the shots and how Glenn likes to dwell on an image. He likes to really dwell on an image. Glenn Danzig, for those of you who don't know, Glenn Danzig, he wrote this movie, he directed this movie, he was the co-cinematographer, he was the co-editor, and he scored the film, and he has a supporting role in the film. Am I leaving anything out? Is there anything else that Mr. Danzig, Uncle Glenn, did on this film?
I mean, he really oversaw everything, honestly. Those were all of his credited roles, but everything filtered through him 100%. And going back to the DIY ethos, he employed with the Misfits, when he was doing everything himself. If Glenn could have done everything in this movie by himself, he probably would have. But it's not. It's impossible to do all of these. Glenn can't act and be the gaffer at the same time. So that was probably part of the frustration with the filmmaking process, is that he wants things to move at his pace, and he wants to be doing it all. And yeah, in a way he kind of did, but I respected that on set, because I get on so many of these movies where it's just I'm working on some piece of crap, and half the people don't want to be there, including the directors, and there's really no vision on this thing at all. And Glenn knows exactly what he wants, and every minute of that film up on that screen is because Glenn wanted it there. So I respected the fact that he had a very clear vision of what he wanted to see.
He is an auteur in the same way that Dan O'Bannon is an auteur on the production of Return of the Living Dead. Dan O'Bannon was infamous in some instances of being a very hands-on, immersive director who really believed in the auteur theory and style that. And for those of you, I'm using this word auteur, and I don't mean to sound like a pretentious film school snob. It's just that's what the term is. And an auteur is a filmmaker who, it's like what's the best way to say this? Like, it's like the film, even though the film is like a team effort and made by a lot of people, it's also it's like a singular authorship that a filmmaker takes over a film. Usually it's accompanied by the title, a film by ... or a a so-and-so film, a Spike Lee joint, that kind of thing. That's kind of like the auteur approach, where you literally have a little piece, you have a hand in everything. I think you said it so well about the DIY punk rock ethos. But my question to you is, since Glenn was involved with so much and so fully immersed in this process, first question right off the bat, I'm watching this beautiful wide open vista shot with Mr. Death Rider on his horse, and he's got his endowed companion on, on the back of a horse, and you're traveling, and it seems like you're shooting at magic hour, or I guess the opposite of magic hour is what happens at sunset. I don't know what you would call dawn, although I guess this would be sunset, so it's supposed to be some sort of magic hour vista. And yet I noticed there were some spotlights in the front of the horses that are riding through. And I, about halfway through the film, I was thinking about this because I was really like dwelling on it. I'm going, wait a minute, was this done with green screen, or did you guys actually go out and shoot wide? Because I'm like, why are there lights here if you have like dawn coming up through? I don't know. I think the idea would be to do some sort of silhouette, and yet you're losing that effect and aesthetic because you have spotlights in front of the riders. I don't know if you can answer that question at all.
Yes. So that was all stitched together from a few different days. We were out in like the Palmdale, Lancaster area, which is desert, basically. It's like 30 or more miles outside of LA. We were probably 50 or 60 miles outside LA in the desert. And this was like, we went out to the desert maybe 3 or 4 times to shoot this stuff. And it was a little bit challenging because Glenn had a very specific idea of what he wanted these scenes to look like. Like the rocks had to look a certain way, the vista had to look a certain way, everything had to look very particular. So we would send locations people out to find these locations out there, take some photos, get them approved by Glenn, and then sometimes we'd get out there and Glenn didn't actually like the location. So we'd have to then find a new spot. So we ended up doing a little bit more work out in the desert, just to find the right spots for these scenes. So, that might be why the lighting looks different in some parts of it. I know, I can tell you he was very specific about the lighting, obviously being credited as the cinematographer, at least on Letterboxd. Was that in the film too? I can't remember, but
in the film, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, those were challenging days. Really, it was freezing fucking cold out there. It was like 35 degrees. Everybody was miserable, and Tara, our well-endowed lady on the horse, was out there completely naked while we were shooting this. So yeah, those were rough mornings for everybody, but especially her.
Now, but the actual dawn coming over the mountains, that's
actually dawn. Yeah, we didn't green screen that stuff. That's all actual dawn.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, there was
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the only actual green screen that we really used, well, the vampire deaths were shot in front of a green screen. Other than that, the only real major green screen scene was Mina Bell's death.
Gotcha.
Which probably seemed clear that they were not walking through the desert in that scene. It actually looked really good the way they composited it, but that was our only other like major green screen scene, really.
I have to say, while there were some aspects that did not necessarily lend to an authenticity, in other aspects, I was very impressed with some of the special effects work with, like the melting vampires from the silver when he pours the silver down the guy's throat. Yeah, it came out really nice. You could see the money went to the special effects as it should, to make really good
Yeah,
special effects and such.
it really did, and honestly, I really do give the film a lot of credit for that because the vampire deaths do feel a bit novel in that regard. Like they don't quite look like every vampire death that you see in movies.
Right.
So I think that they did a really good job putting that stuff together because we did not do any of that stuff on set.
Wow.
The set effects were pretty minimal. It was mostly appliance pieces. A lot of stuff was just added there in post.
Now, I noticed that this is one thing I spoke about at great length when I reviewed Veronica, and I think it rings true. I've heard a lot of people wondering, asking, has the people are comparing Veronica to Death Rider. Was one better than the other? I would say that Glenn Danzig's filmmaking has definitely improved a bit from his first film, Veronica, which feels in a weird kind of way. A friend said this, I thought this was very sort of accurate. Veronica, in some cases, feels like music videos, that he's directing music videos, but without any music, in that kind of way. They're very sort of surreal sort of pieces. And this feels like a more of a story, more of a formed story.
Yeah, and that probably makes sense because I don't think, Glenn had only directed a couple of his music videos before he did Veronica. So I think he directed a couple of those, right? Yeah.
He directed quite a few music videos, and some of those you might consider to be, shadow directing credits or co-directing credits or whatever. But he definitely directed. Hold on one second. I see something. I have some major flooding going on. Hold on. I just felt my feet just started to get wet. Wow. Is that for real right now? You're not going to believe this. My entire basement is flooding. Well, I'm in we're right outside some serious storm weather right now. And I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is, I had some towels down here.
Jeez.
Yeah, I got a problem. Hold on one second. Fill some dead air for me, Anthony. 1 second.
Sure. Jeez, let's see.
Holy fuck.
Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed the movie. I think it's definitely, geez, I feel bad because you're dealing with such an issue here. I do hope everybody goes to see it in theaters, though, if only because it's cool to go see something by Glenn in theaters.
I am so sorry to interrupt. I have major flooding all over my floor. There's a lot of electrical equipment here. I have no choice but to end the broadcast in this moment right now as I deal with this insane flooding.
Please do.
Let me ask you a question. Would there be any chance that we could possibly have you back for a part 2?
Yeah.
Your convenience. Let me ask you a question. Could we schedule this? Like, I'm going to end the broadcast and we're going to talk about how we can schedule this real quick. Is it possible to do that with you?
Totally. I'm free.
Okay. I'm going to do that right now, guys. This is crazy. Remember the last time when we had a tornado and I had to end the stream about a year ago? Well, we're dealing with some serious shit right now. So I'm going to end the stream. I want to thank Anthony. I'm going to schedule the part 2 with him immediately so we can continue this. I hate that I have to stop right now, but I literally had no choice as my feet are literally soaked with water. So I'm going to end the stream.
Yeah.
Hold on, Anthony. Wait 1 second.
Yo, my Lord. You do not know what. My God. My goodness. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, Amy. Hello, Brandon. Hi, Ravner. Welcome to tonight's show. Before we launch in, let's get the intro out of the way. I'm trying to be more consistent with our intro song. This is how we begin the show, so we're gonna do it.
Jeff is gonna talk about the Misfits right now. He's a nerd about this stuff, obsessed anyhow. Jeff never shuts his face, always needs to talk. Might be some way if he went out for a walk. Do you think Danzig cares? He doesn't care. He's not into ranch.
Okay, we're back in the basement. We're bone dry. I mean, not bone dry. Yeah, we're pretty bone dry, actually. So here's what happened yesterday. For those of you who may or may not have bared witness to this, this is what's up, Von Doom? Shout out to Von Doom for being a YouTube member. Thank you for the support, my friend. I throw the devil horns right back to you, good sir. Here's what happened yesterday. So this is like at the beginning of the TV show, previously on Streaming Evil Live. I had a guest on, Anthony Arrigo. He was the second AD second assistant director, second AD on the film Death Rider and the House of Vampires. And we're just having a grand old time. Like, really, I'm like stoked about how this episode is going. I'm loving. We're getting some good information. We're learning something about the movie industry. What's up, Roomwork? I hope you and your family were safe and dry yesterday. Truly, freaking having a great time, learning stuff about Death Rider. I had a lot of questions about Death Rider, and I was hoping to get some of them answered. I wanted to, analyze the film and, talk about Danzig's progression. And all of a sudden, we had gotten these warnings. I'd gotten them on my phone. We've had them in the past. Last time, remember we were going to do the New Zealand episode, I think it was. We were talking to, I think it was Nigel from New Zealand about when the one time Danzig went to New Zealand in 1994 and his crazy sort of backstage story. And that turned into a tornado. There was a tornado warning. The whole family was in the basement, and so we had to stop the show. We had to come back, do another show. Well, yesterday, as I'm talking to Anthony, here's what you guys didn't see if you were watching the stream. So off to that side right there, I start to see my wife like sort of fussing around in the corner, and she's, sometimes she'll coming back and forth when I'm broadcasting, doing laundry and whatnot. And, she knows the drill. If I'm broadcasting, I'm broadcasting. I try to, I keep a tunnel vision as much as possible. You know how much ADD I have and how many tangents I can go off. So it's like, I got to like make sure I'm zeroed in or else I'll be wandering around my room, right? And so she's doing stuff, and I think she's dealing with laundry because I see towels, and I'm just trying to intently listen to what Anthony is saying. And she starts like Jeff. I'm just like, oh, come on. Like, what is so important right now? We're in the middle of the show. Like, I just want to do this thing. Yes, leaving is in Death Rider. I was shocked to see that. I was not aware that he was in the movie film. I'm going, what is going on, right? And freaking she keeps like kind of like I finally turn my head around in the middle of Anthony's explanation of something, and right behind me, right over here, I don't know, I'm gonna sort of tilt this down. All of this area is covered in water. I feel it. I feel the water on the back of my heels. And, I have like a power strip right here. I've got plugs. I've got, all sorts of machinery. And I'm going, oh my God, I got to stop what I'm doing right now, because if I don't, I might get electrocuted. Our house is like being destroyed. I have all my records, my 7 inches, my comic books, my DVDs, my Blu-rays. You saw Anthony's impressive collection of Blu-rays. I have a less impressive collection, but a collection nonetheless that I cherish, and several records that are definitely worth some
worth some loot. And, all my stuff, my possessions, my hard drives, my tape archive, everything is down here in this basement. Everything is kind of lifted up. Miraculously, even though we must have gotten a quarter inch of water down here. The whole floor was covered with water, but we managed in a team of two, my wife and I, from the moment I ended this stream, what's going on? Myself and my wife toiled till 3 a.m. We got the shop vac. I was soaking up the water. It was like we were fighting. We were fighting the rising waters. She had, in Israel, it's called a magav. It's a squeegee. She was basically mopping the floor, pushing the water out through our house. If you saw my little blog, you saw what was going on. Pushing the water out through our garage. And we just kept this up. There was we discovered that there's a crack in the concrete blocks in our laundry room right next door to here, and it was like a fountain. It was like a faucet of water just pouring in. It was terrifying. It is terrifying when it's happening. And I'll say this much: I wanted to just everything is safe. Amy is asking if everything is safe. Everything is safe. Everything that's the point the overall point of my story is that I feel, and even in the middle of it, I felt immensely grateful, because as I was in panic mode, I start thinking in my head, I'm going, okay, I'm taking inventory of every valuable I have in this basement, and I'm so sorry to hear about that, Alan. And going, okay, everything's kind of safe. Like, everything is risen up off the ground. We're moving stuff around. We're shuffling things around, and it's gonna be okay. The water is supposed to stop at 11:30, and then it went to 12:30, and then it was till 2:30. So we just kept doing the thing, because the groundwater, there was so much rain. There was so much groundwater. It had soaked up from the accumulation. We got so much rainfall that we don't normally get here in New York. And we kept trying to keep a positive mental attitude. I'd be lying if I didn't say there were a couple of yelling matches between the wife and I, trying to get everything, the back and forth. But in between that, it was like, gotta stay calm, gotta keep your eyes on the prize. This is gonna stop eventually. Took the shop vac and straight up put it against the wall, sucking the water out of the wall instead of off the floor. All crazy madness. And, like I said, I feel really grateful because people lost their lives yesterday. A dude was eaten by an alligator. No joke. Dude was straight up eaten by an alligator in Louisiana because the water was so high and big old gators came. So it's, and the fact that we're doing the show 24 hours later, that we're able to get the basement studio office back in, back in the swing of things, I feel grateful, and I'm really happy that Anthony is back. He's waiting in the wings right now as he listens to me tell this tale. He's waiting in the wings, and we are now going to pick up where we left off last time with our story. Not our story, it wasn't a story, just talking about the making of this film and some of the aesthetic things, and chatting with Anthony. Hi, Rebecca. I hope you are safe and dry in Louisiana. Amy, I'm sorry to hear that about your grandparents' house, and I'm glad I could give an explanation, Raphael. Without further ado, let's bring Anthony back in. Hey, Anthony.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So what were we talking about?
Jeez.
I remember what we were talking about.
I can't remember, honestly.
So, without re-explaining everything we spoke about yesterday, we initially go back and watch the first half of this episode. It's now a two-parter, not by choice, but that's just the way it is. We were talking, I was asking Anthony, because, again, as a filmmaker myself, as someone I've made a feature-length film myself, I know what goes into it, but at a micro-budget level, not at the level that Anthony works at, a much bigger level than I. But I was sort of looking at, aesthetics and was curious, just had questions, because I was like, oh, I wonder why that is, and I wonder why this choice is made. And he actually broke some stuff down that I didn't understand or didn't realize. So he was telling us about the vista shot, the big wide open shot at the beginning, which I thought might have been a special effect. And we were talking about how awesome the vampire special effects looked for the the silver getting poured down a vampire's throat, which is fairly original. You don't really see that. I haven't seen that sort of death in a vampire movie yet.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Well done.
Yeah. I was pretty stoked about that. So one thing that I've noticed. Let's take it from this, because we briefly spoke about Veronica, and this is what I've noticed with GD's foray into filmmaking. It's something that I've spoken about. It's a theme that we've continuously spoke about, not just on this show, but something that we just talk about on this channel, because a lot of what we talk about on this channel is, creative art making art, the artist's process, right? And
right.
I once heard, and maybe you'll agree with me, Anthony, maybe you won't. I'd love to hear your 2 cents on and whether this applies. When you're making something, especially when it's a film, if you're a director, we were talking about the auteur stuff too. When you're when you're making a film, you are trying to bridge 2 things. You are trying to bridge your taste with your ability. You have a taste. You might have a deep understanding and intimate knowledge of the films you like and the aesthetics that you like. And, a lot of filmmaking is really, taking cool stuff that's come before and trying to, put your own little spin on it. And then there comes down to the execution of that spin and what ends up coming out on the other end. And I feel like for Glenn Danzig, like many filmmakers, he is simply, have been 2 exercises in him trying to bridge his taste, which he has quite a palette, his intimate understanding of spaghetti westerns and 70s Euro slasher stuff and Bava and all this and that, and trying to bring his filmmaking, elevate his filmmaking to meet that standard. Yeah.
I his influences I thought were pretty obvious in the film. A lot of Hammer horror played a big part in that. The Euro horror for sure. The spaghetti western stuff, and it's again, it was everything he wanted up there. So we were just there to make sure that he could see that vision through as best we could. So I think at that budgetary level, this he got what he wanted.
For sure. I noticed that there's a lot of zoom in shots. There are these zoom in shots, and he did it in Veronica too. They seem to be sort of like, again, going back to that, like it's that 70s grindhouse style. Is that Glenn behind the camera, working the camera and racking focus himself on the subject?
Yeah, we had actually shot with 3 cameras, so which is a luxury on a film at that budget level. Really, you usually have 2 at most. Right. Glenn operated 1 camera, and one of my friends is actually also the co-editor of the film. So I think they maybe mainly used Glenn's angles, but again, Glenn knew what he wanted to shoot, so the other 2 cameras were there for additional coverage, and you need something else to cut to, but most of it was what Glenn wanted to see. So yeah, those zooms and all of that's all him.
That's really interesting. So you had 3 that's usually, you hear about that stuff for like sitcom TV work, where you're sort of getting coverage from 3 different angles. Was that was Glenn Danzig's idea? He wanted to have 3 cameras covering everything? Yeah,
I think I wasn't part of those original meetings, but as everything was put together how Glenn wanted it, I would imagine that Glenn wanted the 3 cameras. I will tell you, it makes the days go very quickly.
Wow.
If anybody knows anything about production work, your average day is 12 hours, and it goes up from there. So to have 3 cameras, pretty much guaranteed that you'd have a 12-hour day.
Now, I'm assuming if this was digital, that means that did you have 3 dedicated DIs for each camera, or you got one team working round the clock to back stuff up?
We just had one. We just had one DIT.
Wow.
Yeah.
My volume is low. Really? Volume is low? Do I sound low right now? Why is that? I was just bragging to Anthony off screen about how my setup sounds so much better, or I think my setup sounds so much better, and you're telling me otherwise. Anthony, do you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you just fine.
What about now? What about now? What about now? I must be peaking. Hello, hello, hello. All right. It is what it is. I'll just get real close to the microphone. Hopefully that's better. It's clear, just low? What? I don't know what else to do, you guys. This is about as high as it gets. So how long was the total shoot, Anthony?
I think it was 21 or 23 days, something like that.
Okay, that's pretty for a low budget something. That's pretty.
These things are usually like 15-day shoots, so we had a little bit more time than usual on this one.
Right. Now so you got to really you were around a lot of very interesting people. I didn't realize, I was shocked to see Lee Ving in the film. I did not realize that he was in the movie. That must have been awesome. He came in for a day or something?
We had Lee for a few days. Yeah, he's super cool, really chill guy. Would sing to us when he was hanging out in the back waiting to go on. Just like the nicest guy. Old punk rock dude. So
he started late. He was in his mid-30s, I think, when they started doing Fear, something like that.
I never listened to Fear, honestly. So I only knew Lee because he had sung on a Dave Mustaine side project called MD45 that I knew him from, which I'm sure to Lee Ving fans sounds horrible, but I wasn't too familiar with his work before, but really nice guy.
I'd recommend the first album. The first album is the Fear the record is really, really solid if you are into other punk rock besides the Misfits. We didn't talk about that. You said you were a Danzig fan.
I'm actually not. The only punk rock that I like is the Misfits.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What you're more in the metal realm, or
I was always an '80s metal guy. Like,
gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So
Okay,
but I like the Misfits.
Right, and it's funny. Just to sidestep for a brief moment, that it's funny how the Misfits always get the metal pass, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I love asking this question. If you had to, I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you had to guess, what is it about why did the Misfits get a metal pass?
I don't know if it's because there's also some kind of link between metal and horror movies, and there's so much horror iconography and the lyrics in Misfits, and then obviously the aggression of the music, and it's the image, it's the artwork that Glenn used, it's that whole vibe that they put off. It feels, it's punk, but it feels like it would apply just as well to metal. And if you're also into horror, then it just seems like a natural fit for me.
I think that's incredibly valid. I've heard so many different things, and every time someone answers that question, they always come at it from a new angle, and it's incredibly valid, So that makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Right.
to get back to Death Rider. So here's the plot. Again, we said we were going to spoil this movie, so here's the plot, or at least some of it. And that's what I wanted to clarify with Anthony, because maybe I told you how you're immersed. We talked about being immersed in the dark theater and how it's almost like an out of body experience in terms of like you kind of like space out on what you're seeing. You're not like, you kind of get lost in the images, especially when like a shot holds on something for a long time.
Right.
And I was trying to grasp what the story was. I was trying to figure some of that stuff out. And I'm not sure if I had a full grasp, which is why I wanted to confirm with you maybe that you might know more because, you worked on the thing and saw the thing as well. That, okay, so essentially what you have here, again, spoilers, if you have not seen it, do not get off the stream now. I hope I sound loud enough. Basically, you got this guy, Death Rider. He's on a horse. It's a world full of vampires. They never explain why everybody's a vampire. I like that. Right?
Yeah, I like ambiguity in my horror, so I thought it was a good idea.
I mean, why do we don't need an explanation for why everybody is a vampire. They just are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it totally doesn't matter. I actually thought that was a really great, unique hook. I think Glenn is capable of incredibly unique, creative, fresh ideas. And it's just that maybe the way that he goes about executing them could be better suited if he delegated more to others. But as we said, we understand that he wants to be in a tour.
Yes.
So you have these people. You have this guy, Death Rider. He's riding on a horse. Your classic, man with no name. He's just the Death Rider. Literally calls himself like Rider. Wears a leather kerchief as the girl Mina calls it. He wears a leather kerchief, and he's got a well-endowed girl, and he's riding towards this place called Sanctuary. Another cool idea. Again, I think Glenn is a great idea man in this kind of way. Just like comes up with a great setup. He bumps into Danny Trejo, who's a vampire, because everybody's a vampire. Except, here's the one thing. And again, I don't mind films. I don't know about you, Anthony. Like, well, I guess you just said you don't necessarily need an explanation, but like I kind of like it. I don't know what you would call this. It's not dream logic. It's just surreal logic, like where it goes unexplained, but you're not upset that it wasn't explained.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So there's no explanation for this well-endowed girl on a there's no explanation for this well-endowed girl on the back of the horse who's not a vampire. So there are non-vampires in this vampire world, but it's a vampire-ruled world.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, I'm assuming she was some kind of I don't know how many humans are left, but sorry, I saw somebody's comment about Sundown, which is a great movie, by the way. I just assume, yeah, she's some kind of virginal sacrifice for the vampires, and that's something that obviously appeals to them enough to let him into Sanctuary.
Right, so that's the price.
Pass. Yeah, that's the price.
That's the price. And I mean, you that's in the synopsis. You could read that on IMDb. And so, but she's not a vampire. And then they bump into Danny Trejo, who is a vampire. And he's all like, he's all talking about how he's going to kill Death Rider, I guess. And Death Rider runs really, really fast. Like, really fast. You never see any vampire run fast after this one time that he runs really, really fast.
Yes.
Anthony, were there more times that maybe this got cut? Was there a lot of extra footage that was sort of like, or do you remember scenes being shot that didn't end up in the final film?
I can tell you that the script was about 56 pages. So getting that thing up to 90 minutes, that's why a lot of these shots are longer. It was a very short script. So we didn't really shoot anything that didn't wind up on screen.
So it's interesting that Anthony says this. Again, we were talking about some film-related terms and terminology before. Well, there's a rule of thumb in filmmaking, and it goes like this. 1 page of screenplay is supposed to equal 1 minute of screen time. So if you have a screenplay that's 56 pages, it will approximately... Now, this isn't set in stone, and frankly, it's somewhat of a myth, as you can see with Death Rider and the House of Vampires. But you essentially are supposed to get 56. It's a way of sort of knowing what your total runtime could be if you're just still if it's still just on the page, if you haven't gone into production yet. And so that's not always the case, though. Sometimes you might have a script that's 76 pages and then you wind up with 104 minutes. Like that could happen. Sometimes you think of stuff while you're on set. Some of the best moments in films are thought up right there in production, split second. Great example, Blade Runner. Everybody talks about Blade Runner. Rutger Hauer gets his lines, thinks it's too long and too crazy, and basically re-edits his monologue to just be these things about the glistening beams or whatever, and the tankers on fire off of Orion, and it's considered to be one of the greatest monologues. That was thought up on the spot, or like very quickly on set. So sometimes things miraculously, serendipitously happen on set, but in this case, 56 pages for a 90-page script is that's crazy. That is really, really, really light. That's a light.
I was a little surprised by how short the script seemed, but again, in Glenn's head, he knows how long he's going to hold these shots and the length of what these scenes are going to wind up being. So 56 pages seems short to me based on what I usually work on, but he knew that they would equal out to probably about 90 minutes. So, that's where the film is at.
He made a meal. He made a meal out of those 56 pages and pulled it out like Laffy Taffy. And so, yeah. So after he he goes toe to toe with Danny Trejo, he runs really, really fast, punches him out, ties him down to burn. Danny Trejo's really sad about it. He's calling out. He's calling him these names, calling out. They make it they ride a lot more. There's more riding. The film is Death Rider and the House of Vampires, after all. So the first, however many minutes, I didn't know, I wasn't looking at my watch, there's riding, and then the rest of the movie is a House of Vampires. So it's on brand. And, sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
Said it delivers on the title. Yeah.
It delivers on the title. We get to the House of Vampires. He knocks on the door. He's got his entry fee, which is this young endowed lady that was on the horse, who's scantily clad, if that at all, and they let her in. They're all vampires, and they just take her away. We don't see what happens to her. He goes before this count played by Julian Sands, the warlock himself. And he's great. He's really great in it. Like he's doing the best that he can with the material and giving it his all, and you could see it. And the lighting reminds me actually very much kind of like the lighting I have here a little bit. Like it's very intense neon lights in this main throne room.
Yeah, these are Glenn has these little Stellar lights that he likes to use, like these old lights, but they've got this really nice blue light. So we use those in a lot of scenes. You can see those lights, and he would set those lights himself, obviously. So that's where you get that really nice blue hue. Those are his personal lights.
Did he talk about taking photography or being going to photography school when he was on set?
No.
Yeah, so again, as we said, Glenn has a hand in every aspect of the production. He knows exactly what he wants. But this is, I think, Anthony actually said it really perfectly last time. This is a this is a mentality that has gone all the way back to 1977, right? Like this is a mentality of DIY. I'm going to do this my way. Whether it propels me or hinders me does not matter. I'm just going to, live or die by my own sword. And I guess it's been no different with these films. And so you have Julian Sands acting it up. There are these guys, they're monk guys, they're doing their monk thing. They're like monk vampires. You kind of forget everybody's a vampire after a while, right? Because they're all vampires. So it doesn't even, it's like, God, what's that movie? It's like Blade 2, right? Because like the vampires don't even feel like vampires because then you have the other vampires that are vampires.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
True.
Which is a great idea too. I love Blade 2.
It's a good sequel.
Oh, phenomenal sequel, truly. And you know what else too? This is really, well, we'll talk about that later. Predator films. I just rewatched Predator 2. So blown away. I want to make a whole video about it, but so blown away by Predator 2.
Underrated.
So underrated. So now Death Rider, he gets shown to his room. There is I don't even know her name. She's just a lady, a debutante. Maybe she's a lady of the night. Who is she supposed to be?
Are we talking about Kim Director?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. A lady of the night, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. She's a lady of the night.
She's the girlfriend of a main character in the film. I guess it's not really a spoiler, but yeah.
Oh, what? Who? The Count?
No. Like in the film, she's with. You're talking about Kim Director is with Bad Battery.
Oh, I did not. That I don't know why I did not put two and two together with that, or maybe I missed something.
Oh, they were together at the end of the movie.
Right. Yes, I remember when he's standing up when he sees Death Rider riding off, and they're like, "We're gonna get you someday" or whatever.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what I got from it, at least.
Yeah. No. That listen. Like I said, that's why again I had questions. I was maybe I wasn't as paying attention and didn't realize that in the moment. But I mean, now that you say it, it definitely. It definitely makes sense. So then she has an assistant named Mina, and Mina's kind of she's a little ditzy, and they're both attracted to Death Rider, and she says the Kim Director's character says, "Hands off, he's mine," and obviously that's not going to be the case later on, and. There's some seduction. He goes to his room. He decides to lie down. And then here is our first plot reveal. I don't know. What would you call this? A plot twist? A plot reversal? Not a plot reversal. A plot reveal. I would say this would be the beginning of Act 2, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Because we learn that there's more to Death Rider than just being a rider of death. He's got this, what is that? Like a thing. He has a roll with he unrolls his leather like fruit roll up. It's like it's like that leather kit unrolls, and there are tools inside, silver, stakes, stuff like that. He's gonna do something in this house of vampires.
Right.
So he goes out and mingles downstairs, and that's when we get to meet Eli Roth. And now Eli Roth, it's funny. Julian Sands, I don't know if Julian Sands was very aware of Glenn Danzig. I don't think Devon Sawa was really new. I read an interview with Devon Sawa where he was kind of seemed like he didn't know what he was in for in working with Glenn Danzig's film with Glenn Danzig's style of working, right?
He did.
I'm sorry?
He did not. No.
Yeah. Not aware. Someone who seemed incredibly aware. oozed it on screen was Eli Roth.
Oh, totally. Yeah, we had some conversations about his role in the film, and yeah, he was very much there to have a really good time with that role, and he did. He was pretty funny on set.
He shows it, every ounce of it, on screen in his role. He's just oozing like charisma and having a great time. He knows exactly why he's there in terms of just being like, you know, I'm on a Glenn Danzig film. This is awesome. It's fucking Danzig, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a great time. He got it. And then they pour some silver. They pour the silver down a guy's throat. For some reason, Eli Roth's character needs Devon Sawa's character to know that they torture vampires here and pour silver down the throat. So they do that. And then Glenn Danzig comes into the movie as Bad Bathory.
Yeah. And
this is the best part of the whole movie.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that because I'm a Glenn Danzig fan or that any of us that we all love Uncle Glenn the way that we love Uncle Glenn. This is the only way I could describe it. You see Glenn walk in, and suddenly you realize I'm in Glenn Danzig's world right now. This is Glenn Danzig's world. He's so stoked to be in his world. He's so stoked to show you his world. And he's so much so that he has this little smile in the corner of his face the whole fucking time that he's doing his stuff. As he, you know, I could tell he was maybe struggling just a little bit with the it must have not been easy with the fangs. Doing acting with the fangs is not hard to do your dialogue, right?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure tough. I haven't had to talk with any fangs in yet, but yeah, they could be a little challenging for the actors, but he definitely had a good time making this movie, I think mostly as it was, but you could tell his favorite days on set were the Bad Bathory days. Right.
Now, this is when I saw that there were two cinematographers, so when he's on screen, then the other guy is shooting, right? I mean, that makes sense.
He would. I mean, Glenn would still set up his shots in costume, and he'd get everything lined up where he wanted it. But we also had Peja was our other cinematographer, like camera operator. I mean, it's I don't know what the official credit wound up being, but he was also there assisting when Glenn was working. So
there was one other gentleman who was credited as a cinematographer along with Glenn, and it was the same thing with the editing. So
that must have been paid then for the cinematography.
And now, were these days? You mentioned that the days were very economical in terms of time because you had 3 cameras rolling. Were the days? Did the days take a little bit longer when Glenn was in front of the camera? Because it's got to be. I mean, to act in something that you're directing in with a crew has got to make everything go slower.
Not really, actually.
Wow.
Because we had the 3 cameras and we had the luxury of a longer shooting schedule than would normally be afforded on something. You know, if this had been scheduled normally, somebody probably would have tried to do it in 12 days. So the fact that we had, over 20, 21 days to do this thing, we could afford the luxury of making sure that these scenes had time to breathe. So we really weren't in danger of, like going into crazy overtime ever. Really.
Wow. Well, in any case, to get back to what we were talking about in terms of just like Glenn having a really good time in front of the camera, he just seems to be like a kid in a candy store, just like so happy to be doing this thing, to have this role. And I got to tell you, man, I say this from the bottom of my balls, true. Dude is actually a capable actor, and frankly, I think he should do more stuff in front of the camera. Like, he is, I could imagine a world where Glenn Danzig has like this character actor career, kind of like Henry Rollins. He is totally capable of that same sort of, coming in for, a scene or two, doing doing something really interesting and going out. So seeing him anchor this film, but not like be center stage, because you imagine if he's doing everything else, well, obviously it should star him too. But no, he's like,
Right.
no, I'm just gonna be off to the side. I really like that.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
he picked, I think, the coolest role for himself too. Obviously. But yeah, I mean, he's been acting longer than he's been directing, I think. Maybe not, but at least the same length of time as far as, he did music videos before, but he's been acting since back when, I think, what was Prophecy 2, his first role, maybe.
Right.
So, he's comfortable enough in front of the camera. I mean, I didn't see that episode of Portlandia that he was on, but I know he guested on that. So,
Oh, he's great.
he can act.
He was really great, actually, and that's another funny you bring that up in this in response or in relation to what we're talking about. Perfect example of like I'm gonna come in for 3 minutes at the end of this TV show and just like light everything up, and then I'm out. And it's like
Right.
he just did this thing really funny. It's great. I think you could see it on YouTube. You should totally check it out. It's really it's great, man. It really is awesome. And I hope he does more stuff like that in the future. I hope it opens, now that he's, spending time on film sets, I hope it opens him up to other people's shit, and maybe he'll come and, do stuff. I did notice Fred from Portlandia was there, man. He was one of the vampires.
Yeah, he was actually
In the hallway, sucking on some blood.
Yeah, from one of the Soska sisters.
Yeah. Oh, that was them. I didn't realize that
Yeah,
was them.
A lot of the cameos weren't exactly highlighted to the degree that you would necessarily recognize who they were, but the Soska sisters were in there. Fred was in the hallway. He had a really good time. We had Sean Waltman, X-Pac, for those 90s wrestling fans will remember him.
I'm so sorry. I know nothing.
It's fine. That was my lifeblood when I was younger. But
Gotcha.
Lee Ving, Danny Trejo, obviously.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people who just popped in. I had heard at one point Slash might have even been coming in to do something, but he didn't really have time, or maybe he might have just been visiting. But Glenn had no issue getting a lot of his buddies to come down and guest for a day as a vampire. So
I know Glenn is really big into wrestling. Did you ever have any conversations about wrestling with him? Were you able to talk
No.
up on that?
we had other conversations about things, but nothing about wrestling really, because I haven't been into it for years. So that is not the kind of conversation I'd probably think to pick up necessarily. But I never really thought about it.
He's been on some podcasts and talked passionately about wrestling, which again, like I said, I'm not like that in sports. I'm not
a sports guy at all. Just when I was younger, I was all about WWF.
Well, I mean, if you're going to not be into sports but be into a sport, I guess wrestling is like the perfect sport for the non-sport people, right?
It's a male soap opera anyway, so
Right.
it's entertaining, and there's a level of athleticism that you can't deny, even if it's fake. So
There was a video of Fred Armiston and Carrie from Portlandia, and also Slater Kinney. They're like in some car. I think this is before they met Glenn. They drive by Glenn Danzig's old house, the one that everybody visits. Yeah, go ahead, do your thing. I'll fill the dead air. Anthony did it for me yesterday, so I shall do it. Look at all Anthony's movies. Look at that. Look at that library. He's like a modern day Edgar Allan Poe with his, or who's the narrator in The Raven? Who is the guy who's telling the story about the Raven among his books of lore? These are Anthony's books of lore that we're seeing in the background. In any case, there's this video. I haven't been able to find this for years, but it's Fred and Carrie, and they're driving in a car. They drive by Glenn Danzig's old house, and like they're like just shouting out the titles of Misfit songs. Like they're not even singing the Misfit songs. They're just excitedly shouting out the titles of said songs. I thought it was really, 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 really funny. But yeah, so, you know, as we were talking about, Glenn just seems really natural in front of the camera. I really enjoyed watching him act, and I love that he wasn't center stage. I think it was great that he was sort of just off to the side and, you know, come in and bolster the movie when it was supposed to happen, you know? I'll wait for Anthony to come back to ask this because I don't know. Oh, there he is. There he is. So we see you cool?
Yeah. Nature calls. So.
Gotcha. We were admiring all your. I mean, I didn't really see how vast your library was until you stood up and really. Oh my God!
It's just.
That's the room.
All over the place.
That's the room though. That's the room.
Pretty much the room, yeah.
That's the room.
Yeah.
Like, hey, does Anthony have a room? Oh, yeah, he's got a room. That's the room.
It's the man cave, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I totally relate.
Yeah, you get it.
So then what happened? So Glenn, Bad Bathory, he drinks. So then they let all these, I guess they're prostitutes. They just all come out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a little From Dusk Till Dawn-ish. Kind of like a reverse From Dusk Till Dawn where, you know, unsuspecting people come into a bar full of vampires and get their blood dranked and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, pretty standard. Then, all right, this was interesting. So I noticed, now, if you're on a movie set, you see generally anybody who's BG, background, you're doing background acting, you're not supposed to talk. You need to control the sound. So if two people are having a dialogue scene in a crowded room, like at a party or a bar or something, everybody in the background needs to look like they are speaking as well. But they're not actually saying anything. They say something like, sometimes they list fruits, watermelon, cherry, pickle, or watermelon, banana, strawberry, because it sounds like you're saying something without saying anything at all. Post-production, but it left me scratching my head, and I was where you have people just in the background. They're not talking, but it's quiet. There's a little bit of Foley, and that's it. There's nothing else going on. And I wasn't sure if that was like, there was something behind that, or maybe something I wasn't picking up on. Anthony?
I think the only thing I could probably say is that I would imagine Glenn also oversaw all the sound design. I don't believe we captured any of that background stuff live on set. So everybody was just, miming and mouthing and all that, like usual. So I don't know where they got the background sounds from. It's all part of post.
It was very surreal. It was like a surrealist kind of element to it. Like it added like this nightmare scenario quality to it, you know?
Yeah, it was different.
It was very different. It was
different. So, yeah, unexpected, but yeah, I'm sure he did all the sound design stuff as well, and then the mixing and the sound editing and all of that.
You know, I do like some of the mixes on some Danzig stuff, but I really wish, I know Glenn Danzig's done the mixing on all of his records. We've spoken about this before. I wish he would bring some other ears into the mix. Maybe he does, and I just don't realize it. But I feel like I really wish that he would, he produces his own stuff. I really want to see Glenn work with a producer, like a different producer, and just see what direction they would take him with his song ideas and see where it would go,
Yeah, I'll agree because I always like to hear different sounds, but just based on what I've heard, I don't think that would be likely.
Right.
I think especially now with just the way that the music industry has gone and how everything has changed so much, he's very protective of his sound and how he wants things to be. And again, it's back to that DIY approach. So I think he's always just going to handle his own production and mastering and all of that.
I will say the flip side of that is I was really, because I was not really into Skeletons. I was not really into Black Laden Crown, but I absolutely was bowled over by the Danzig Sings Elvis.
I like that record a lot. I think that's great. Skeletons had some good tracks. It was hit or miss for me. Same with Black Laden Crown. I thought there were some really strong songs on that, but I'm one of those guys that just keeps going back to the first 4 albums all the time, pretty much. So, his new stuff is what it is.
If he never does, if he doesn't do, he's talked about how he may not record more music in the future. If Danzig Sings Elvis is the period at the end of the musical sentence for Glenn Danzig, I think it's a good one. And I think that Pocket Full of Rainbows might be one of the best things he's recorded in 25 years. I just think it's stupendous. Big fan.
Be a fitting note to go out on if it was.
Yeah.
But sure. Who knows if inspiration strikes him, maybe he'll do another record. I'm curious to hear what I'm assuming some kind of soundtrack for Death Rider has got to be coming out. So I don't know what else he recorded other than what we heard in the film.
Let's talk about that for a minute. I do have to say I was a little underwhelmed in the soundtrack department on certain levels. Because here's the thing. The opening song is really, really great. I loved it. I really, really loved it a lot. But I felt like every other music cue was not nearly at the caliber of that opening song. And the reason why I think that is, and again, this is just what I came up with in my head, was because he's doing so much stuff. He's spread so thin trying to do all this stuff that, I feel like he let some of the score suffer. It was neglected a little bit. It could have been, I wish that the ultimate truth is, while I thought it was very interesting to see Glenn handle the camera and editing duties and all this stuff, at the same time I almost wish he would have brought other people in and let them do their things so that he could focus on the music and bring the music up a little bit more, because some of it's very minimalist. It's a very minimalist score in certain places, and I just wish it had the same energy as that opening track, which is just great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I thought the opening track was really good, and I was actually surprised that the score was so sparse throughout the film. Because when he was talking about the Morricone vibe, I expected to hear a little bit more of that throughout the film. I thought what was there was all good. I agree that the highlight is definitely the title track. I don't know why the scoring was so minimal. Maybe he just wanted to focus more on the images than anything. I couldn't really say, but there was an opportunity, I think, to bring a little bit more in there in some scenes, just to punch up some of the action.
And speaking of punching up the action, eventually there is a shootout, because of course you can't have a vampire bar, without some silver bullet shootout. So everybody's, shooting their guns. And you know what else too was interesting choice? Again, we're living in a world with no rules we're living in a world of rules that are only Danzig's rules, and only Danzig understands them. And one of those rules is that his vampires drink rot gut whiskey when they're not drinking blood, which I was like, is this bloody whiskey? Is this why are they drinking whiskey? But you know what? Glenn Danzig's vampires drink rot gut whiskey, and that's just the way it is. You know.
Yes, they do. That's right.
They have a shootout. Death Rider eventually, you know, the Count, he doesn't trust Death Rider, and Eli Roth doesn't trust him, and Bad Bathory doesn't trust him, and they go to the Count. They're like, we don't trust this guy. Like, we should do, you know, we gotta do something with him. And then on the flip side of that, Mina has an affair with Death Rider, and Kim Director's super pissed about it, so they burn her at the stake. Kinda, you know, they burn her to a crisp. And you said that was green screen and whatnot, and composited and such. And then here's where I was really confused. I was trying to figure out, so why was Death Rider getting his revenge on this House of Vampires? Because they had his sister, who's played by Kansas Bowling. For those who don't know, she's like a up and coming actress. She's in Quentin Tarantino's film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And she directed a movie for Troma called The BC Butcher when she was 17. And she's just like she's on the rise. But why? Why, Anthony? Why was he so pissed that his sister was there?
I really don't know how to answer that question. I think maybe they turned his sister. They were using her for something. I don't really know. I can't expand upon that too much.
Wait, so they turned. So that means that. So she was a human at one point. She got turned, but Death Rider was always a vampire. Like, this is where I was trying to. This is where I got really confused. Maybe I need to watch the movie again when it comes out. I could not figure this out. You know?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if it was made clear in the film exactly. I assumed that maybe Count had her there for I don't know if she was one of the prostitutes working there, or maybe.
Well, they were all there. There were girls lined in coffins, or they were like cult girls. I was trying to figure it out, and basically,
I don't know. It could have just been that it looked really cool on camera. I'm not sure.
This is true. And ultimately, Death Rider he brings her mercy. He frees her from this vampire existence, which doesn't seem like such a bad existence of being a vampire. Like, it's not like these vampires, they try to stay out of the sun, but for the most part, they seem to have, they just kind of do their thing. So is it like, why is it so okay for him to be a vampire, but not her to be a vampire? I don't know. It just, that part was, I was trying to figure that out. And then, Julian Sands talks for a really long time.
Yes.
Really long time about how he's gonna really give it to Death Rider. And then Death Rider gets him and he catches fire. And Death Rider leaves. He's followed out by Bad Bathory and Kim Director's character, and they look out over the horizon. And now Death Rider, he's taken the girl, the virgin sacrifice that he came with, but now she's a vampire. And they ride off together into the night. And supposedly there's going to be a sequel. I hope so. I want to see more. I want to see whatever Glenn wants to do. What kind of material would you like to see Glenn Danzig tackle next?
Well, I know that I think there's been some talk of a sequel, but Glenn was saying that he wants to do like a kung fu movie. So, because he's big into kung fu, so if he gets an opportunity, maybe he might do something with kung fu. Maybe he might do another horror movie. I'm happy to watch whatever he wants to do. I wouldn't mind seeing him doing something other than horror, just to see where else he wants to branch off into. I mean, we got horror with Veronica, and then we got like a horror western with this. So, like a kung fu horror movie or something could be cool.
I feel like no matter what, there's going to be horror involved if it's Glenn Danzig. Like, you can't Like, there's no way around it. Like, there's going to be some sort of horrific element. I think it's up to us to theorize now what that element might be. What would you what element would you fuse? Maybe werewolves, like werewolf kung fu movie would be interesting.
Problem is most werewolf movies suck. And unless you've got like a really good werewolf suit or a really good budget to make a great looking werewolf, it's just going to be a shitty movie. I think most werewolf movies more of them are bad than good.
What is your favorite werewolf movie?
I feel like I need to say American Werewolf in London. Just because it's one of the best looking werewolves, I think, even though it moves kind of wonky, it looks great. I like The Howling. I'm a big fan of Bad Moon, underrated movie.
Oh, Bad Moon is fun. Really fun.
Yeah, not great, but fun. But there haven't been a lot of great ones out there, so I wouldn't mind seeing him do maybe something like I don't know, something like Angels and Demons seems more up his alley, I would think. But I don't really know. I feel like he could go in a lot of different directions, honestly.
I like what Robbie says here. Robbie Bloodshed says a violent crime movie would be cool for Glenn to tackle. Maybe going back to his Jersey Italian roots and tackling something mob related or just violent crime. Oh, Chris puts a good point too. Something noir, some sort of like neo noir film might be interesting. Might work out really well as well.
Yeah. He knows how to set mood, so
yeah,
something like that I think is in his wheelhouse.
I have to say my favorite werewolf film, hands down, it doesn't get talked about enough. My favorite werewolf film, motherfucking Dog Soldiers, is one of the. Look, Chris and I said it at the same time. Dog Soldiers. Dog Soldiers is such a fun werewolf movie because it just fuses. I mean, it's part action. He really is. Neil Marshall is almost like a horror version of James Cameron in a weird kind of way. And it's basically Night of the Living Dead with werewolves and soldiers. And the werewolves look phenomenal. You never see them for very long. They're very rarely seen in lots of quick jump cutting, action editing. These are nasty werewolves that eat their victims, and I wish they would make a sequel.
Were they talking about making a sequel? I can't remember.
Yeah, they are, but it's just been forever.
Yeah, might have been too long. That's a great film, though.
Really, really, really fun.
Yeah.
Truly. Talk about werewolves needing to look good because, I mean, they put them. These actors, they're on stilts. Like they feel very. There's a real organic sense to these werewolves.
Yes.
Even though we don't know there's no such thing as werewolf anatomy, but this feels like lycanthropy anatomy a little bit. I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that might work. But yeah, a violent crime thriller for Glenn Danzig, a violent crime noir would be very, very interesting. And they get to do all the gore without being firmly rooted in horror. And, who knows? Maybe get Glenn and Jerry and Doyle in there playing some enforcers. Just sort of in the background. That would be interesting too. I don't know. I think it'd be really, really great. What was the vibe on set generally? Like, was it really like run and gun? Was it loose? Was it really tight because you only had 23 days?
It was a little tense, I wouldn't say it was a run and gun because we shot almost all of it in one area. Most of it was shot at Heritage Square Park, which is in the LA area, like kind of just not too far outside of the downtown area. But there's this whole little block that's just all historical homes, and they're very old, and so those interiors all matched what Glenn was looking for. So like a lot of sanctuary was in this old church that was on the property. So it was, I guess, a little bit tense on set, only because Glenn very much ran the show, and he's still I guess figuring out a lot of aspects of production. So
Gotcha.
It was just a bit of a again, it kind of goes back to if he could do it all himself, he would.
Right.
So,
right.
Having to have all these different departments working together, but all needing to be on his exact page, it took a minute for all of us to kind of see what his vision was and get there with him. So, some days were a lot more chill than others, but that's the same on any production ever. Right. So, this was just a little atypical in some of the ways that he wanted to run the set, but at least for me, I need to be super malleable in my position to at least be able to work with different directors and their styles. So that was just how I approached it, and so, but also being a fan and knowing a bit about Glenn before I came into the project, I kind of knew what to expect just in terms of his demeanor and attitude and the way that he would probably want things done. So, so I think that gave me a slightly different perspective on things than most of the crew, who were just, non-union people in LA who don't give a fuck who anybody is on set.
Right. Right. What was it like? By the way, I do agree with Von Doom said here. He said, I always thought Glenn should do an animated film of Paradise Lost with the Black Aria as the score. That's actually a really interesting idea. I could totally see him doing something like that in the world of animation. So but Glenn Danzig, like, or at least in the sense that you worked for Glenn Danzig. So what was that like? I mean, that must have been awesome being a fan. Because we talked about how you started, you're a fan first, and then you got on the show, and then you find out it's Glenn Danzig, and you're like, holy shit, I'm a big Danzig fan. So how do you navigate that? Do you let him know that you're a little bit of a fan, or do you you play it completely cool, like straight dry, like just like, oh yeah, hey Glenn, what's up? Here's some coffee. What's up? Just doing a thing. Oh, we're gonna do that now? Yeah, cool. Like,
that's kind of more or less how I that's how I play it on set with most people anyway. Like,
right.
It's different. If I were at a concert and I went, to the buses afterward to meet Glenn, I'm going there as a fan, and it's a different experience. When I'm on set with Glenn, we're all, at the end of the day, everybody on set is just another employee.
Right.
So, in that sense, it was. It was surreal to be working alongside of him, but I knew that I was working alongside of him for a reason, because I had a job that he needed me to do on set.
Right.
So, I think I'd let him know at one point that I was a big fan of his work, just because I think Glenn appreciates that, and nobody else on set really, I don't think, was a fan of his at all.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, a couple of people were, and definitely he was working with some people that were friends of his. But again, you're just pulling together this crew from around the LA area, and a lot of these people are younger kids that may not necessarily be into. They may not even know who Danzig is. So I had a bit of a different experience as a fan on this, but. Each day was a challenge in figuring out, whether it was scheduling of days or scenes or actors, whatever it is. So, I'm just working alongside of him every day, trying to figure out what's going to be the best course for his movie. But I think he appreciated the fact that I was a fan. I mean, I think he's definitely. It's funny because he seems like he wouldn't be a guy who's so approachable and receptive to fans, maybe necessarily. But I was just at the Death Rider premiere a couple of weeks ago, and he stayed down in front for every single person who wanted to get something signed before he left. So he definitely appreciates the fans, and I think that helped me out a bit on set.
I mean, time and time again, you hear just about how he really does show up for his fans in this facet, very solicitous to his fans. How does that come out, though? Is it like, do you just matter-of-factly, you're like, oh, yeah, Glenn, like, I'm not doing an impression of you. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm matter-of-factly just be like, hey, Glenn, yeah, like, I'm a fan of yours. Or is it like you're talking by the friggin', hostess cakes at Crafty, and you're just like,
Duncan.
Yeah, and then you just something casually comes up, and then you reference something that he would allow him to pick up and know that his shit, or
I think I just kind of mentioned it casually one day after we'd probably been figuring out some shit on set or something, and I was appreciative of the fact that I was doing my job correctly, and then I just kind of offhandedly told him that I was a fan, just more to let him know that I was a fan of his work, and I understood what he was doing, and I'm on his wavelength. He doesn't think I'm just another asshole on set that doesn't know what he's doing, and maybe doesn't see what his vision is necessarily.
So do horror films, because again, we talked about having taste and ability and bridging the two. And I know that some film directors use their taste as almost a vocabulary, a reference point. Oh, I want to do something like this from this movie, like this, that kind of thing. Were horror films discussed a lot? Excuse me, it's a seltzer. Were horror films discussed a lot on the set in that kind of way, or just in general, or I don't know. Was there a lot of horror talk?
Some, yeah. We definitely discussed some of the Hammer horror and spaghetti western influences a bit, but honestly, I spent so many of these days, really, I worked more on this show than most of my other shows. So I wasn't always on set because as a second AD, my job is actually a lot of the time it's offset. So
call sheets
and getting actors ready and making sure that everything's ready for the next day. And, when I have all that stuff settled down, then I'm on set, watching what's happening and supporting the first AD and doing all of that. But, I kept myself so busy that I didn't have a whole lot of conversation with him about horror movies necessarily.
That must be very interesting too, when you're bringing people to set, when you're bringing talent, actors, whatever, to set, and does small talk evolve out of that, or is it a very quiet, clinical process of, hello, knock, 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 Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, it's your call time, or it's time for you to come to set, or is it more...
It depends on the actors, honestly. Some of them are more quiet when they're walking a set than others. I generally tend to be more quiet and just, I don't want to say professional because it's not like you can't talk to these people, but it's just, I'm usually just very cut and dry when I'm on set. It's usually just kind of business that I'm focused on.
That's a good way to be.
Getting the day done. That being said, lots of small talk with Eli and Julian Sands and Devin, and everybody was super cool. So after all this time, and when you're going through if you're working on these productions, you're kind of going through the ringer with all these people. So it's a shared experience of joy and trauma. So you tend to bond with all these people to a degree that you've got this thing together that you're all just sort of getting through. It's like I said, they're long days,
Right.
so there's a lot that goes into it. But
Devin
everybody,
Sawa's, man. Oh no, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I'm saying everybody was in pretty good spirits for the most part, though, when I was dealing with them.
Devin Sawa, man, he's done a lot of great films, a lot of great genre work. Truly.
And he's been doing a lot of really good stuff lately.
Yes,
interesting movies.
Hunter.
I didn't see Hunter yet, but I saw him in the Fanatic, which I thought was. I really enjoyed the Fanatic. Everybody hates the Fanatic.
I love the Fanatic.
If you've ever gone to a convention, you've met John Travolta's character 100 times. So,
okay, and it's directed by Fred Durst. Okay, that's number one.
Yeah, other than the one unironic use of Limp Bizkit in a scene, you wouldn't really know that it was directed by Fred Durst. I don't think.
Yeah. You are correct about that. That's not like it didn't scream Fred Durst, except for what you're referring to, and you know.
Although I did hear that John Travolta recut that film himself, so that might also have something to do with it.
What, I did not know that.
Yeah, I heard that.
John Travolta is a really interesting actor in the same way, he is cut from a similar cloth as Nicolas Cage. They are very similar in that they can get very into these very weird characters and weird accents and weird mannerisms and things. Well, what you're supposed to do when you're an actor anyway, but
right. Yeah, he commits to this role in Fanatic in a way that really surprised me.
And you feel, guys, spoilers if you haven't seen this movie. I don't give a shit. Spoilers if you haven't seen this movie. The ending is so it's cruel. Like, you feel, not cruel, maybe that's not the right word. You feel sorrow for, I felt sorrow for his character a little bit, that he pushed it so far, and then he got his eye poked out. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, and I did feel bad for him at the end. That whole sequence in the house is just pure insanity. People
really truly insane.
People really do need to watch this movie and ignore the low 1.5 score on Letterboxd it currently enjoys.
It has 1.5 on Letterboxd?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Awful.
Wow. It's hard, man. I do, for a while I was like, I'm not going to score. I'm just going to say that I saw the film. I'm not going to leave scores. And then I was like, that's kind of a cop-out too. But it's hard sometimes to come up with a score for certain times I'm watching stuff. I'm kind of like, there are some films that I give 5 stars. Like, a great example, like Predator, I gave 5 stars. Is a Predator a 5-star film? It's not. But for me it is, I guess.
It's absolutely a 5-star.
Right? Like,
Absolutely.
it's a weird dichotomy where you're kind of rating things, like where there are some films that are like both critically acclaimed and box office, like Jaws. Like, Jaws is a masterpiece, like a perfect, flawless masterpiece. It's always going to be 5 stars. But you wouldn't put Predator in the same arena as Jaws, and yet here I am giving both 5 stars because it means something to me, and I really enjoy this film, therefore it's 5 stars to me.
Yeah, and that's how I tend to rate films. Really, is it's mostly my enjoyment level of the film, and then also how is it as an actual film. But if it's 5-star entertainment, then it's going to get a 5-star rating. It's because if you give Predator and Jaws both 5 stars, it's not. You're right. It's not putting them both in the same league, and you can't compare Predator to Jaws. But they're both 5-star films in their respective categories, I think.
There is a film you have Shudder?
Yeah.
There's a film, I don't know if it's still on Shudder. I watched it I want to say in the spring. I think it's called Game of Death. And it's like a board game, takes a sample of blood from everybody. If you don't kill someone within a certain amount of time, then your head explodes. And very standard sort of, like, that's just the setup. But very sort of standard like type of, like we've seen that movie 100 times or a variation of that film.
Sure.
But this one, not only is this one really, really, really well done, the pacing is excellent. It comes in at like 74 minutes long. And yeah, I like really short films, like short features. I think I really admire them and their ability to, when they're really well done, to be so, it's really, really nice when you nail it and it's 74 minutes have passed and the movie's over. I think that's really cool.
Right. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Is that a new movie?
I think it came out in 2018, 20. I'll send you the IMDb for it. You should definitely watch it. I think, actually there's a great search engine if you want to stream stuff legally, not illegally, legally. It searches all the streaming platforms like Hulu and Shudder and whatever, Netflix, and shows you where things are streaming. It's called justwatch.com. I use it all the time. It's a great way to find out if a movie is streaming legally on a platform.
And also Letterboxd.
Letterboxd too. Letterboxd is another great. I so much stuff that I find on Letterboxd. Let me ask you this: are you ever in a situation where you're so set on a rating, but then you see someone else that you respect and follow on Letterboxd, and they have a way different rating than you, and it makes you question your judgment and affect how you perceive the film?
Maybe occasionally it has a little bit of an influence. I think it would be impossible not to, but I only follow people I know on Letterboxd. Only because I started following other people that I didn't know, and they were too many people like everything on that site, and then my whole feed is just somebody liked 50 reviews. I can't see anything that my friends are posting, so that's why I just
gets messed up.
Yeah, exactly. So I if they had a feature to shut that stuff off, I'd probably follow more people because I am interested in reading more opinions. But I'll generally look at my couple friends that I follow, but I don't let it influence me too much because sometimes I'll think about the awful ratings that they give good movies, and then I realize that it's none of this matters. It's all subjective. So I base things purely on my enjoyment. Really, if the movie makes me feel something or not. So I think I'm pretty fair with my ratings, I guess.
I try to be as even keeled as possible. It's it's hard. I generally, even if a movie is really bad, I will try and only comment on the things that I liked about it, or like I'll only talk about, or I will critically break down what it was that might have not worked for me, but
yes,
would never say something sucked or was bad or wouldn't recommend something. If you don't have anything nice to say, then just don't say anything at all, right?
I mean, honestly, I still say things even if they're not nice, but I try to put it in a constructive way. That
constructive.
I'm telling you why it wasn't good, and I like to at least offer up something for where I think it could have been improved. But I think it's important to also take the good with the bad. It can't all be nice comments, I think.
Now, here's what's interesting though. Then here's another interesting thing about Letterboxd is then you have like the heart function. So I'm giving this only 3 stars, but I'm giving it a heart because I love it so much, even though it's only a 3-star movie.
Right.
Which makes it different from a 5-star movie somehow, which I might also still give a heart. But it's like the heart is almost like, look, this does not deserve 5 stars, but I love it. Or like, this doesn't deserve 4 stars or 3.5 stars, but I love it. And so I'm going to call it a favorite. And I don't know. Like, you could have a 1-star movie that might have a heart,
Sure. I don't know if I have any of those, but yeah, it's, the acknowledgement that this is not a great film, but there's some merit to it to you for some reason.
Right. But then, like, what about a movie like The Room, which is by many considered to be a masterpiece, and at the same time, criticized for its shortcomings? Is The Room, does that make The Room a 5-star movie, or does that make The Room a 1-star movie? Like, because, like,
I've never watched The Room.
Oh, really?
I think it looks awful. I don't think I don't think you can say it's a masterpiece unironically. So this is like people who laud Troll 2 so much. A movie that's terrible is not good because it's so terrible. You can appreciate the fact that it's awful, but it doesn't turn around to being good suddenly. It's a horribly made film is a horribly made film.
You know, I actually really kind of agree with that. You know, like I do. Like it's like, yeah, like you have to acknowledge the film's greatness for the right reasons. You can't just acknowledge. You can't just call it great because it's so bad that it's good. That doesn't make it a good movie. But you can still acknowledge that it's got humor, or that there is humor in this film. It's even though it's unintentional.
Sure,
that makes it great.
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember like 850 movies come out a year or something, and so many of them are just forgettable crap that nobody's even going to watch. So if something really bad gets some notoriety, you can say that it's a 1-star movie and it's probably a terrible film, but maybe it's worth watching because it's so bad that it provides entertainment on another level. But you can't say that it's a masterpiece for that reason. I don't think that really holds weight.
Battlefield Earth.
Never watched it.
I will say this about Nicolas Cage is one of my favorite actors of all time. I truly believe that there's no such thing as a bad Nicolas Cage performance. I only think there are bad directions of Nicolas Cage. Like, you have to know how to direct Nicolas Cage in order to get what you want out of Nicolas Cage, in so much that he is like tofu and he's going to taste like whatever you season him with. But
I agree.
Yeah, so I'll watch anything with Nicolas Cage in it, because I don't think there's no such thing as a bad Cage performance. It's just about like what kind of Cage you are going to get. And I'm not even talking about like Rage Cage. I'm talking about like,
that's the least interesting Cage, honestly.
I mean, that's the most cliche Cage, and that was like that was really popular in 2017 when Mandy came out. But there's so many other far more interesting Cages, because he's really trying to do so much in acting. Like, a great Cage is, I don't know, have you seen Bad Lieutenant, Port Authority in New Orleans?
Yeah, great film.
Great film. And what he's doing in that film, like halfway through the film, he just decides he's going to talk like Humphrey Bogart. And it's so, I don't know why, it's so brilliant, dude. It just adds so much to the performance. And he has these moments of true mania, and again, not Rage Cage moments, like just these moments where he works himself into a frenzy, and everything that he's putting on the screen, it's so authentic, like it's so genuine, and makes it great. You know?
Have you seen Pig?
Have not seen Pig yet. I cannot wait to see Pig.
Phenomenal.
You dug it?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Some of the best work he's done in years.
So I'm not sure what my number is on Letterboxd. Actually, I could tell you. I'm on a quest to see every single Nicolas Cage film ever made. Even all the direct-to-video ones. I watch every single Cage performance. I've seen a lot of them. And I think he's made 100. Here, let's check right now. I'll tell you how many movies he's made. I'm going to find out. Nicolas Cage has made, as of now, and he puts out like eight or nine movies a year.
Oh, yeah.
Acts in them. Whoa, what? That's way lower number than I thought. It says right here that there is... Wait, why is it not giving me my percentage? Oh, it's because I'm not logged in. Of course. Let's log in real quick. If you're not on Letterboxd, you should really check it out. That is how I met Anthony. If you did not watch the first episode of this, I wrote him a comment and he gave me his email. And now we've had a long conversation. Okay, so he's only made 115 movies according to Letterboxd. I've seen 47% of them. I've seen 55 out of 115 Nicolas Cage films. And thank you. I'm in no rush though. Like I'm in no rush. I'm taking my sweet time. I watched them all. I watched Weatherman. I watched Family Man. I watched Matchstick Men. I watched Trapped in Paradise, great film. Freaking It Could Happen to You. Peggy Sue Got Married. Valley Girl. The list goes on and on and on. Do you know that Nicolas Cage has only starred in 3 sequels out of 115 films? Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a really good ratio, actually.
I mean, the amount of original performances that he puts out into the world every year, I mean, he should be heralded for the genius that he is, truly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an Academy Award winner. You can't take that away from him.
That's true.
So,
I guess that
and
means something.
He's a Coppola, and he doesn't even bank on that name. Like, you think that this dude doesn't go into Hollywood being like, hey, my uncle directed The Godfather. No, instead he takes the name of his favorite comic book character, sets out on his own, not a handsome guy by Hollywood standards at all, kind of goofy looking, little doofy looking, and just completely carves out a niche for himself, becomes this big action star in the 90s, you know, rivaling Schwarzenegger and all these muscle heads, and he's just like a guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he did use the Coppola name briefly in the beginning.
Did he?
Yeah, he's credited as Nicholas Coppola in Fast Times.
Okay, but I mean, he's got like a bit part.
He didn't rise based on that name.
No, he did not. People don't know the name Nicholas Coppola. They know Nicolas Cage. And
Yes.
I bet you if you were to take a poll on the streets of America, Middletown, America, and you ask them, hey, who's Nicholas Coppola? They'd be like, I don't know. Who's Nicolas Cage? Oh, yeah, that's a face-off guy, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So
Nobody know that. Yeah.
respect to you, Nicolas Cage. Loves Superman so much that he named his son Kal-El. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Bold
I had a
move.
friend who was just doing a Western with him out in Montana recently.
Oh, I bet that was. What did he say about it? Did he say it was awesome?
He said it was awesome. He said he was very cool. He got to do some off-camera dialogue with him while they were filming. So big moment for him. He was very elated.
He got to be in a scene off camera with Nicolas Cage.
Well, he was ADing it, so he was just
Right.
reading some off-camera dialogue for him.
But he was in the scene even though he wasn't in the scene.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I don't, like, does it get much cooler than that?
No,
I guess it can get a lot cooler than that, but still.
Yeah, I'm hoping to wind up on one of his sets at some point.
You know, it sounds like you're a very talented second AD, and the fact that Nicolas Cage does so many fucking movies a year, I would say your percentages, and you're in LA, I would say your percentages are pretty darn great that will happen. I really want that to happen for you.
So do I. Yeah.
Truly.
So, we'll put it out there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you've put it out into the universe. If it happens, you gotta send me an email. Be like, Jeff, it's happening. I'm on a Nicolas Cage film. Yeah, Prisoners in a Ghostland. That's the new one. Can't wait for that.
Heard some good stuff about that one.
There is one, oh my God, what's it called? I think it's called Alien Fighter. He's like a kung fu master fighting an alien from another dimension. Came out like 2 years ago. Pretty gnarly stuff. Pretty great. Actually, it wasn't that great, except for Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage was, I mean, it'd be the same thing. If Glenn Danzig was doing what Nicolas Cage, appeared as a bit player in these films, I'd watch the film just to watch that performance. And I really think that Glenn Danzig would really, really, really also just sort of make a career for himself as a character actor. Not that's what he wants to do, but
Sure. It'd be nice if he did, though. I remember racing down to Warehouse to rent a copy of Prophecy too, because he was in it. So,
Yeah, it was definitely, it was really, really, really interesting to see that. I wish it wasn't so quick. It's so quick.
It really
barely
is.
get to see his face.
Yeah, he's hardly in the movie, but it was at the time a very big deal. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he also did some anime stuff. He did a Satanica cartoon, I think. Grub Girl did a Grub
Right.
Girl comic thing. So it's pretty much fucking Glenn Danzig. Let's see if we have any comments before we wind things down here. Anything interesting? Yes, we talked about that. We were talking about werewolves. We were talking about this and that. Are you making your own stuff at all? Like, do you write and direct? Do you like make shorts, or you got like a feature stashed away somewhere that you're trying to put together, or you're just reveling in the life of
No,
second AD?
I enjoy just working in the industry. It's I second AD. I work in the production side too, coordinating. So I honestly keep busy enough with that I'm usually not working on my own stuff too much. Maybe at some point, but that keeps me busy enough right now.
Is there is there a destination that you have in mind? Like, do you want to get? Are you trying to? Is there is there a position somewhere, as you said, like within the cog of the machine, or a cog? Is there a certain cog in the machine that you see in the future that you'd like to have your name on, but don't quite yet?
I've definitely got vague ambitions in the industry, but I kind of fell into this industry as a fluke. I just kind of got into doing it because I didn't really see a career in the film industry freelancing as something that made sense, because I was used to working, and I had a normal office job for years, and I was just used to structure and a steady paycheck and all of that. And I didn't really understand how my friends who freelanced worked and made money regularly. So once I got into doing this, I've just kind of been going with the flow, really, and I've enjoyed where it's taken me so far. So we'll see where the ultimate destination could wind up being. Right now, I'm just kind of enjoying swimming around in the non-union waters and second ADing fun projects and working on random stuff that people call me up for. And if I get tired of that, then I'll probably look into something more specific. But I'm just kind of enjoying the ride right now.
Let's close this out with something that I've asked my guests on occasion. I'm going to ask you your top 10. Sorry, not top 10, top 5. So crazy. Top 10? It's like a whole episode. I want your top 5 Misfits, Sam Hain, and Danzig songs.
Oof. Okay.
Now, let me preface that. Let me preface that real quick by saying it doesn't have to be of all time. It could just be whatever is, whatever you're into at the moment. Like, it doesn't have to be a be all end all sort of situation. That's up to you.
Right. Although I think I've been listening to all of this material for so long that they probably are my all-time favorites, I guess, at this point. These Misfits, I feel like you always got to have skulls in there. I Turned Into Martian's always been one of my top tracks. I really like Some Kind of Hate.
Great song. Great song.
Jeez. Static Age came to mind. Hollywood Babylon.
Ooh.
This is what just poured into my head. Honestly, I love every Misfits track, and I love all the, like I like all the different mixes. Like I'm a big fan of the Devil's Whorehouse mix on the Misfits 2 compilation. So,
Have you ever listened to the Plan 9 version of Devil's Whorehouse?
yeah, I've got the whole Misfits box ripped on my phone, so I constantly will go through all the different versions of those songs and listen to them from all the different sessions.
They're so great. They're all unique and wonderful. I agree.
Yeah, they are. It's even like when Glenn did his own little solo single with Who Killed Marilyn and Spook City, USA. It's just hearing those different mixes. And Glenn, again, that's Glenn doing everything himself. Geez, Sam Hain, it's really hard because they don't have that much material, but geez, I mean, you could just pick almost any 5 off November Coming Fire, because that's always been my favorite album by them forever, really. I love the first album. I like all that material, really, but November Coming Fire, it's any 5 songs off that would be my favorite 5. As far as Danzig goes, I feel like I got to go Twist a Cane.
Okay.
For one, I mean, that's the track right there that kicks it off. I've always been a big fan of Sistinus.
Oh, love that song.
I think it's some of Glenn's best singing.
Agreed.
Until You Call in the Dark, great track. Big fan of Danzig 4. I feel like that's kind of underrated among those 4 albums.
It really is.
Long Way Back from Hell, great track. And geez, let's end it with something a little aggressive. A big fan of It's Coming Down on Thrall.
All right.
Yeah, I'm happy with those picks.
Those are all solid picks. I mean, anything from November Coming Fire. You really cannot go wrong with this album. It's stupendous in every single sense of the word. I want to thank Anthony so much for taking his time 2 nights in a row. Double header. We delve deep into Death Rider, as deep as you can go, and talked about movies and Nicolas Cage, and it was really fun. I want to give a quick shout out to Pete Roloff, I hope I didn't butcher your name, who sent a tip last week on a Wednesday, and it didn't get highlighted for some reason. And so I just wanted to give him a quick shout out, a tip of my hat, and a thank you for his support. I also like to thank the Patreon members. I'm going to do that real quick. We have Jason Horton, Dagger Love, Nullified Voices, William Rodriguez, Alan Salata, Below Is You, Appetite, Nikki, Crazy White Boy, Mike, Adam Harmless, Ratty, John Voice of Doom, Rue Morgue, Honolulu Babylon, and of course Kevin Von Spear, aka Kevin 45. Kevin's out in LA right now. He's working on a documentary for Haunted Garage. Can't wait to see what he is cooking up. So happy for him and his crew, and I hope it is a great success. And a quick shout out again to Von Doom. He's on here somewhere. He has a YouTube membership. Please make sure to check all this stuff out, the Patreon, all that stuff. The links down below. And yeah, I think that's it. We have a nice way of closing. We say on the show, peace and hair grease. That's what we're going to do. We got the peace and the hair grease, and then